Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the new year, January 2022 for the St. Louis Java Users Group. For those who don't know, the St. Louis Java Users Group is an informal group. Attendance is free. There is no formal membership list. And our normal meeting date is the second Thursday of every month, except December when there is no meeting. There's just too many things going on over the holidays for us to organize a meeting then. When we meet in person, you can join us for food and social at 6 p.m. and our meeting starts at 6:30 p.m. When we meet in person, our normal meeting location is in the Object Computing Incorporated training room, and that's at 12,140 Woodcrest Executive Drive, Suite 310 in St. Louis, Missouri. I'd like to introduce the other members of the St. Louis Java Users Group on the steering committee. So from left to right, we have Ted Doyle, Todd Zimmerman, Bruce Allspaw, that's me in the middle, Weiqi Gao, and Kathy Zwang. You can reach all of us on the steering committee by sending an email to that email there that's at the bottom of your screen. That's javasigsc@ociweb.com. The St. Louis Java Users Group would not be possible without the help of our sponsors, so I'll just take a look at these logos here. Our lead sponsor that's been with us since the beginning, since I believe 1997 or so, is Object Computing Incorporated. They are our founding sponsor and they fill in whenever we have a gap or anything like that, and they do sponsor the training room when we meet in person. Jfrog has been a sponsor. They've been covering the cost of our Zoom account, and that's what's allowing you to watch the meeting right now here online. So thank you very much. And I'm going to come back to them in just a moment because we have a nice gentleman from Jfrog who has a special prize that he would like to raffle here tonight. Signature Consultants and Adaptive Solutions Group are headhunters. So when we meet in person, they will often sponsor the food for the meeting. And so if you're looking for a Java position, or if you have a Java position that you would like to fill, you can just do a quick Google search and bring them up and let them know that you found out about us through the St. Louis Java Users Group. At the end of the meeting, we will be raffling 2 JetBrains licenses. Yes, you must be present to win for those, so stick around to the end of the meeting for that. Elastic, when we meet in person, has some gift cards that they've been sending, and whenever we get back to in person, we'll raffle those. Intertech is a training company, and you might want to look them up online because you can get lots of training on Java and lots of other related skills through their website. They sponsor the so-called Screaming Flying Monkeys. I don't know, the people who have seen those, they're little monkey dolls. And if you throw them up against the wall, they scream and make a lot of noise. And they're a lot of fun. So, and some coffee cups and mouse pads too. At the end of the meeting, we will also be sponsoring 2 Manning ebooks of your choice. And again, you must be present to win for that. And also on occasion, Pearson Books will sponsor some physical books. So at this point, I think Jfrog has some announcements. So I'm going to turn things over to Jfrog, and then you can come back to me and I'll finish the announcements. Tell us about what's happening there, Ari.
I'll do that, Bruce. Is it okay to share my screen real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, let's see if I can do it. Good deal. Okay. Let's see if I got the whole screen. I think I did. Well, first of all, my name is Ari Waller, and I am the Meetup Event Manager for Jfrog, and we're really excited to be a sponsor for the St. Louis Java User Group. Really appreciate Bruce and team just doing such an awesome job month to month. Love the consistency, always care a lot about the content, and a lot of great care is given to that by everyone. So it's just really awesome to be part of that. I'll share a little bit about who we are. Jfrog, we are the DevOps software company founded in 2008. Many people in the community know us best by our flagship product, Artifactory, written in Java, of course, which is considered by many to be the gold standard when managing your artifacts and dependencies. I'm really excited to announce that if you can see in the screen, this is our new. It's on jfrog.com, and you can get to it there. But we have our new jfrog.com/community site, which is a very content-rich site that we have spent a lot of time putting together. And I'm excited very much about this little button here for Java. And we have all of our Java related content and so forth that we have available to the community as well, along with lots of other really cool things on the site. So just one of our big announcements over the last week has been that.
Hey, Ari.
Yeah.
If you don't mind me interrupting, I see you just fine. I just don't see your screen.
You don't see my screen?
No.
But I do see you.
Okay.
So the way Zoom is working, you have to click view up at the top to see the other screen because we have multiple screens shared.
Let's see. Okay. Oh, can you take down your screen really quick, Bruce, and I'll put mine up?
Yeah, I can do that. Let me just close out that I'll just
Especially, and I'm glad you interrupted me because people aren't going to want to miss the next screen.
Yeah. Let me turn off my screen share. And I will, well, here, I'll just close that window that I'm sharing.
Sure. Okay.
How about that?
That is beautiful. And now I'm going to go ahead and share my screen really quick. And here we are. So this is the really quick. This is the new JFrog community site. And when you click on Java, you get lots of Java rich content, everything from blogs to videos. In fact, I think we even have one. Oh, look what popped up here. The last time one of our JFrog folks spoke at the St. Louis Java Users Group. So we've got some really great stuff here for you. Since this is a Java developer meetup, I know several of you are developing in the cloud. So we want to make you aware that we have a free cloud conference coming up. It's DevOps Cloud Days 2022. It's a virtual conference. It's free, and it's January 17th to the 19th. And people can see that, and people can see the screen on this one too, correct?
Yes, I can see it just fine.
Great. There's a QR code there where you can register for free. And we have one day dedicated to each of the cloud providers. So let's say you have a favorite, you can stay for just a day, or if you have topics that are relevant to your day-to-day, you can just jump in and jump out for the ones that are most important to you. But we have just some of the highlights. We have Richard Seroter, Director of Product Management from Google Cloud, Bridget Cromhout from Microsoft, Emily Freeman, author of DevOps for Dummies, and Yoav Landman, CTO and co-founder of JFrog, who will be speaking at this event. So this is really a lot of fun, and I'll drop a link shortly in the chat. And of course, this is another bonus for tonight, is just for attendees. JFrog is going to give you a chance to win a Raspberry Pi 4. Now, I don't know if you have tried to buy a Raspberry Pi 4 over the last year. If you have, it hasn't been the easiest task. Generally, they're out of stock. And if you find them, you only can buy one at a time. So I have different vendors sending me Raspberry Pi 4s so I can get a few prizes for the community. So we have an actual Raspberry Pi 4 available. You can enter the raffle through the QR code or the bit.ly link that you see that I'll also drop in there. But here's the best part. Even if you don't win the Raspberry Pi 4, I am going to give anyone that tries to win a JFrog t-shirt tonight by just entering. That's why you'll see an address and t-shirt size there in the raffle form. So we can mail you off a t-shirt. It really, Bruce, you kept on mentioning getting back into person, and it'd be really great to do that. But at the very least, in the meantime, gosh darn, let's all get some really cool t-shirts. We have a really cool Black Panther Frog t-shirt that we'll send out to you just for entering. Just so you know, for the Raspberry Pi 4, a winner is going to be selected within 2 business days. Unfortunately, with compliance, I can't do over the web sweepstakes. But that being said, we will contact the winner, and once they claim the prize, we're going to share with the meetup community who they are. So sorry, it took a little longer than I wanted to share all that, but at the same time, it's just really exciting to be back. And Bruce, I'll turn it back over to you. And thanks again for allowing us to be part of your community.
Oh, sure, that's fine. Let me see now if I can bring this window up. I need to zoom some things to get that. Let me see here. I need to get back to my desktop here. And I'm not sure what button to hit for that. Meetup is just not cooperating for me because I can see you just fine, Ari, but you've taken over my entire screen and I can't find anything underneath it to get to my desktop.
You can still see me?
Yeah, I see you, but I don't see your screen sharing. I just see you.
Click
I
on
think he stopped
view
sharing.
and say exit full screen.
Yeah, but the problem is, well, let me see. Hide
there's-
non-video participants, chat, mute audio. Let me see here. No. That, I don't know why this thing just decided it's just gonna commandeer my screen and hitting escape doesn't do anything. Let me see here. Oh, come on.
I'm just happy we're not using Microsoft Teams.
I think it's funny that I have the option to actually share my screen.
Yeah, the thing is, it's like everything's taken over my screen here. What happens if I do that? Okay, now if I act as if I'm gonna log out of my computer, finally I get a window up and maybe I can get back to where I had my jug slide. Go into the slides directory. And I'll go back to my 2022 slide here just shortly. Okay, now I've got that. Now let me see if I can get this window up. Oh, come on. Window, come up. It's like it appears for like a split second and then it disappears when I hover over it. Now, what I need to do here is click this button and then click that one and click that one. Now, how does that look?
You got it.
Better.
All right.
Exciting.
Now, back to the announcements. Finally, after that delay, maybe I'll figure out a way to edit the video and take out that pause. Anyway, the Gateway Software Symposium in St. Louis is coming up on April 1st and 2nd, starting at 7:30 a.m. And that you can attend it either in person or online. If you're attending in person, it will be at the St. Louis Marriott West at 660 Maryville Center Drive in St. Louis, Missouri. And if you want the details, you can just go to that website right there at the bottom of the slide. nofluffjuststuff.com/St. Louis. There's another one that's coming up too, and that's Dev Nexus. It's one of the largest Java developer conferences in the United States. And that will be April 12th through the 14th, 2022 in Atlanta, Georgia. I've been to that conference. It's a fantastic conference. Registration is now open for that. And you can get all the details on all the presentations and registration at devnexus.org. As far as upcoming presentations go, on February 10th, we have Unit Testing Principles, Patterns, and Practices by one of our Manning book authors. We managed to get a book author. Ted got that one scheduled. And on March 10th, we have GraphQL Distilled by Keto Man of Virtua. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. So please tune in for those. And I should also point out, if you want to see the presentation schedule change as we schedule presentations, just go to our meetup group site. That's meetup.com/gatewayjug for updates to the presentation schedule and location. So as presentations are scheduled, we just put them up right there so people can go ahead and RSVP. Now, if you're interested in giving a presentation or sponsoring the Jug, you can just send an email to the steering committee, and it's that same email address that I mentioned before. That's javasigsc@ociweb.com. So now I think we're ready for tonight's presentation, finally, Alan. And it's your internal developer platform is suboptimal. Alan, you're at Veterans United Home Loans, and I understand you're using this new platform here. So why don't you tell us all about it?
Yeah, sure. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I hope it doesn't mess with you, Bruce. But
Okay, I just closed it out. You should be able to do it.
So hopefully you can see my screen. And I just want to ask the audience here, none of you were using Log4j, right? Like you weren't impacted by the recent Log4Shell stuff, right? This whole audience doesn't use any of that, right? Yeah,
Well,
too soon,
Ted
right?
is using it. He's got a hand up.
Version 1. Version 1.
Version 1?
Yeah.
Oh, you avoided it. Good. It was so
Yeah.
early. Wonderful. Yeah, so I just like to point to that as like, Java and that is like a platform component. And when you build platforms, like, there's a big wide reach and, hopefully you can update them quickly, right? And so I think we're all kind of learning these lessons these days, but I'm going to tell you about myself and this platform we built at Veterans United Home Loans. It's an internal product. It's called Devlab. The dot is silent. And the whole point of this presentation is simply, I think if you work at some place that is going to be building the platform, I just recommend you don't build it from scratch. And you're going to kind of see why about the journey. So before I continue on here, is anyone running on Kubernetes? Any of your workloads? Is anyone out there that like you have workloads you're putting on Kubernetes today? And if not, that's totally fine. You can type it in the chat. Okay, we got one person so far. Great. So I work at Veterans United Home Loans. We help veterans utilize their military benefit to put zero down on a house. I don't know if you are aware, but housing right now is pretty wild. It's pretty hard to find a house, and a lot of us are trying to find some space and room considering everything that's going on. So it's been a pretty busy time for us, and it's really made the importance of building a platform even more important. So who am I? You're probably asking, who's Alan Barr? Well, I wrote a blog post about this topic about you shouldn't really build your own platform, and I went on this podcast. If you have not heard of it, it's called DevOps Paradox. Victor Farsick on YouTube has wonderful explainers about a lot of the Kubernetes tools. So if there's anything about Kubernetes you were looking to know, he's probably made a video about it, and it's really informative. So the point of this presentation and what you're going to learn is what goes into building a platform from scratch and what we learned. Basically, from 0 to 1, building a product and then attempting to get it to grow, because once you build it, that's just the start of the journey. So you're going to learn about our first-hand lessons. So what is a platform? You might be asking yourself. Well, I love this quote from Evan Botcher. He narrows it down to this idea that it's a collection of utilities, docs, services, knowledge, building an internal product. And that's important because it's 2022. We need to be building software systems that the developers using them enjoy and are not fumbling around in constantly. The challenge with building your platform for your enterprise is that you're going to be facing these 3 challenges. You'll need a dedicated product team to own and run the platform. And the reason is that a platform is long-lived. You can't use project-based thinking. A lot of companies are still thinking about projects. A platform is a product that will continue to exist. You need to do care and feeding. And then your teams will eventually struggle with losing some of the autonomy that they're used to. The features that the teams are used to doing in their code are going to have to move into the centralized platform team. And the challenge with that is it's going to be uncomfortable. There's going to be some challenges with them giving up some of the control. The questions we've gotten during this journey is like, well, where do I get to run my scripts in the pipeline to configure the CI/CD platform where we've taken that away from them. So it's been a bit of a struggle, but over time we've kind of come across better ways to do that. And then they just need to realize that there's some things that are going to be great on the app development teams and some things that just need to be centralized. And you'll kind of learn about why centralization is going to be important. So you might be asking, what is Kubernetes? Not everybody's super aware of it, and that's okay. It's an open source tool for building platforms at this point. It came out of Google. It's got a big community around it, and we chose to use it to build our platform. The benefit is that it's really focused on orchestrating containers. And if it's a little difficult to explain all the things that Kubernetes does, but if you check out the illustrated children's guide to Kubernetes, as ridiculous as it sounds, it's very enjoyable and it's very understandable. And it will just clear up all the understandings that you need once you read it. So I highly recommend checking that resource out. Now I use this quote from Kelsey Hightower. He's been in the Kubernetes space for a long time. But I love that he reflects on the things that he's seen, and he's trying to say here that you can really achieve a decent enough platform with modern tools that we're used to, VMs, some configuration management sprinkled on it, and you're ready to go to town, and you can build something that is valuable and getting a lot of the cruft out of people's ways. So the point of that is Kubernetes is not the point. It's about building a platform that your developers that you work with or you are going to use and enjoy working with, because that's really important, that you're enjoying the tools that you're using and you're also solving the real business problems that your company wants you to solve. So who are we at Veterans United Home Loans? This is what we look like. Many of you, I imagine, don't work in .NET. That's totally fine. .NET is cross-platform now, so it can run across different platforms such as Windows and Linux and whatnot. We're a little late to the game there, but Java's been doing that for a while, right? So where we're at today is really focused on building the platform that's cross-platform for all the different languages we want to support. And at the time, it's really .NET, Python, PHP, but the platform is agnostic to what is running on it because we're leveraging Docker files, we're leveraging pipelines. If we ever were to acquire another company that was a different language, it wouldn't be a big ask. There are a lot of things that we want to do to improve the platform, and the team that's building this and running it is really just 6 people, a couple platform engineers, a few software engineers, and they're supporting 130 plus people that are doing a variety of different things. So what was the problem with Windows, you might be asking? I imagine we could find many, right? The problem that we had with our Windows VM environment, with virtual machines in particular, was all the waiting. If you see in this list here, for a team to start a new project and even to simply experiment, it took a few days to get anything going. And that might have been really great a few years ago, but that's not really adequate anymore. We're really used to things that we can do on demand. So we've taken a lot of that out with this platform, and it's really just like plan your idea, click a button, 10 minutes later, you have your app, you can get developing. You still need to do your monitoring and alerting. We want to make that easier, but it's very trimmed down. It's very easy to experiment now. So the value is what we're trying to get for our internal developers is streamline, consistent experience, especially via standards. That's really hard. I don't know where many of you work. If you work with big, large teams, standardized software has been a big challenge, especially for us. And then less waiting, maintaining other tools, the supporting debugging. We have a dedicated team to help you if you're one of our developers. If you have any challenges, which there's much fewer than ever before, and then those developers can focus on their products, and we can make changes at the platform level without impacting them. So the common challenge we've seen is the security team notices that there is a problem, but there's 37 different backlogs that we need to get this security change into. Well, I have this deadline I need to hit. The product people say, like, well, it's important. We need to do it. And it's not where we want to be today. We want to have a lot more control, and we have that with Kubernetes to put all those cross-functional things in Kubernetes and not get in the way of the app development, which is really great. So the hope here is that Kubernetes is this universal cloud platform. If you want to take your code from on-premises to the cloud, you can just send it anywhere you want, AWS, Google Cloud. There's probably a lot more work to it than that, but it's much more possible than we ever have had the chance before. So what was the early product vision? White glove, meaning we want a hospitality-focused experience. We want our developers to do their work and not have to think about why was it done a certain way. There's going to be things that are still hard in development. We can't expect everything's going to be done and easy for us. We're here to solve problems, right? For the most part, we want to keep the infrastructure and the cross-cutting concerns out of their hands, and we want to focus them on the things that are important for them to solve for our business. Oops. So there were some missteps. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't an easy thing. It's about 1.5 years in now. But at the beginning, we realized we're not that good at building the product from scratch. It was really hard at first. There was a lot of vision drift and alignment issues. We really went back to this big upfront design. Well, in year 3, it's going to look like this. And that was not what we needed to really talk about. And then we're going on all these different cultural journeys that we never really confronted with our leadership and whatnot. We're kind of building the tool, and we're kind of saying, well, they'll come and then they'll realize that they need to get used to more standards, more focuses on microservices, more focus on API contracts, a lot of better practices of working in a big internal environment of an enterprise. So this is what the timeline of the platform looked like. And the 3 key things to it was executive support. We've been talking since 2017 about building a microservice orchestration platform. And so there was about 3 years of conversations and some false starts. I created this big document that was like our cloud native transformation journey. And people were like, what is cloud native? What does this matter to my business? Eventually, the executives got bought in and they understood that if they wanted to grow the business, then they needed to invest in a platform. So we were allowed to do research back in July of 2020. And then a month later, we had a proof of concept. Then a month later, we started doing some work into building the platform. And a big misstep I used, or we used at that time, is using the term MVP. I don't recommend minimal viable product with a platform because it's really big. It's really thick concept. Like just to offer the minimum level of a platform, it's so massive. So that term didn't really hit. But around November of 2020, we delivered the MVP. People were a little still hesitant. They're like, is it safe to use this? Can I depend on it? The virtual machines still work. But we've got adoption, we've got usage, it's growing. We have 46 applications in production. So it's very exciting times. And around May of 2021, we decided, you know what? Instead of waiting for the year to say general available, let's go, everybody can get on board, we cut that to May. So it was 10 months instead of 12 months developing the platform. It's probably too much for a lot of companies, but for us as an enterprise, we're doing home loans and mortgages. We weren't prepared to do that. Great question from Peter. We'll get there. You'll see. I think I just revealed it. So some stakeholders we were trying to engage with at the time with software engineers, senior leaders, executives, software architects, technical trainers, product owners, they all want something out of this thing. The senior leaders, they don't know why we're building a platform. They don't really understand how it's going to affect the business. They don't need to know about cloud native and all that, but I still struggle to communicate to them what that means and why it's important. But we all know that, improving our process and making things more standardized is important and valuable. With our software engineers, they want to be busy. They want to be working on cool things. They want to use the latest features. And then our software architects are thinking, well, we don't need that feature, and maybe we shouldn't use this technology. You want to keep things organized and understandable so that we can move people around, and that's a big goal. And at the time, technical trainers were really a huge savings to me because the education of our users from the old way of doing things to the new way was really tough. It was really challenging. We're getting these questions that were totally irrelevant to how we're doing things. And I'll cover that later in the presentation. And then finally, product owners, they really want to try the new thing, but they want to make sure that they can still hit their deadlines, that they're communicating accurately to their stakeholders. So it was really stressful and very challenging to develop the platform and communicate what the limits of it were without overselling it, and then also encourage them to take a risk for us in the business. So to answer Peter's question here, we were told at the time, our CIO at the time, and who's no longer with the company, he was anti-cloud. He said, no cloud. I know you're thinking, wow, 2020, 2022, no cloud? Are you serious? What is going on here? For us, for whatever reason, we feel like it's risky to put data in the cloud. The US government does it, but for us, it's still maybe a little too futuristic. And in some ways, it's benefited us because it focused us. It really made it added a very big constraint, and you'll kind of see why in a moment. And another thing we've chosen to do so far is we're not putting any databases on Kubernetes. Those will continue to live on virtual machines outside of our platform. So you're looking at this, and I imagine you're like, what in the world am I looking at? And this is the cloud native landscape. And what this is the collection of community resources that are a mix of open source and consultants and special providers for everything you can do with Kubernetes. The team and I were looking at this at the beginning saying, what are we going to pick from this list to build the platform? Where do you even start? What do we eliminate? It was really challenging at the time to figure out, we know others have done it before, but how do we know that these are going to be proven technologies for us to use? And a platform is typically for many companies undifferentiated work. It's not going to be valuable ultimately for the business. It will build really good, valuable things. So what it ended up looking like was more like this trail map. And in the trail map, you can see the numbers of containerization, CI/CD. You pick a couple technologies from each of these areas, and then you kind of mix them in. And once you settle, you're good to go. We couldn't spend 2 weeks on evaluating every single type of technology. We had to make some really quick choices about what are people using, what's going to be long lived. I remember getting links as we're building the platform. Well, did you try this product? And as soon as we checked it out, it was already archived in GitHub. It wasn't even in use anymore. So the environment is changing very rapidly. It's a lot more boring than ever before, but there was a lot of risk in that. We could choose the technology and then it could just be gone very shortly after. So Devlab, this is what we've built. It's white glove, but it's still a long journey before we really get all the value out of it. The platform is something you need to migrate things to, and then it lives its life, and eventually you have to migrate off. Eventually you'll see its sunset. So these are some of the products that we've chosen over time to power the platform. And what we basically offer is a front-end portal, and I'll get into that a little bit later about what are some open source options that you can do. But for us, we really have a simple panel for each of the projects that the teams build. They can create a new app, and then behind the scenes, using Git Lab and their CI/CD system, it will shove the Docker file, container images, and our Helm manifests into Kubernetes and install it. And Rancher is our Kubernetes on-premises system. We also use Vault for our secrets. We're trying to encourage cloud events as the standard messaging envelope across our RabbitMQ systems. We use Harbor as an internal proxy for our container images because Docker Hub goes down sometimes, and we prefer to be a little insulated from that. Our users love the Grafana Labs dashboards. It's very nice compared to the Splunk that they're used to in the past. Linkerd is our service mesh, and that's been really rock solid and stable for managing the mutual TLS and keeping the communication between the different pods and containers secure. So there's a lot of other technologies here. The only other one I'd like to call out specifically is Octeto. And the value of Octeto and the tools like it is that it's a rapid inner loop development system. And so what that means is that you can Octeto up at your command line and you're remotely in Kubernetes, and it's syncing the code from your local machine to Kubernetes. It's a little different than local development, and there's other tools out there like it, like telepresence and others that do something very similar. But what this enables you to do is very quickly not need to have everything set up on your computer, the Docker Hub, the Docker desktop, or all the different things you need, the manifest for Kubernetes. You just simply send your code over and it's running and you can get all the access you need to do your work. So I really recommend you check it out. If you haven't seen it or heard of it, the demos they offer are really great. So I touched on the self-service portal that we offer. We built our own. We may move away from that in the future. For most people, they might benefit from these tools like Backstage and Clutch. There is a ginormous Backstage community. It comes from Spotify, and what this enables is a very customized self-service portal for APIs, documentation. There's modules. If you have teams that are really into JavaScript, it's probably a really great tool for them. For us, it wasn't the right flavor of JavaScript to use, and we chose not to use it. But in the future, it could be a really good tool, and it's developing very quickly. There's a huge community behind it because many people don't want to build and own their own portals, which makes total sense. Clutch is maybe a little more focused on cloud resources. So if you decide on building something like this, check those out first. Marketing was huge for the platform. Maybe many of you work in environments where people want to learn Kubernetes in their weekends and evenings. For a lot of the people that I work with, we're really just focused on doing good work and then enjoying our time off and whatnot. So marketing was really key. Naming the platform, once we named it, people really clicked. It really clicked for them that it was a real thing. It wasn't this thing happening in the background. They really loved the hats. It seemed like it really transformed everything once we sent them hats. So we're focused on the hospitality experience. And what that means is trying to solve as much as possible for our end users without them having to think about it so much. So that is, we are giving you this workflow through Git Lab to do your pull requests, very similar to the GitHub style, where you can have a process. Without that before, it was really hard to communicate and coordinate with different teams. Like, can I add to your repo? Is that okay? We also use conventional commits, and the benefit of that is it automatically enables semantic versioning in our pipeline so that our end users are not thinking about what version do I set this to? They don't need to version their containers at all. They don't think about it. It's driven by the pipeline that we've given them. And then we can plug in secure defaults. We made sure that the Docker containers, the containers that are running as rootless, that we have systems like StackRox to check for abnormalities, insecure issues. And then ultimately, we're trying to reduce the cognitive load for the people. They're already having to manage a bunch of different systems, navigate a mix of technology. We have two ecosystems now, the old school Windows .NET. We have the new school .NET 6 now, the naming that Microsoft sucks at naming. So we're really trying to keep it more understandable and make it so that they don't have to really struggle with all the different things that they're constantly learning and changing to. So the problem we set out to solve was we want aligned autonomous teams. We don't want them to be constantly coordinating. If you haven't heard about team topologies, I really recommend checking that out as a resource that really helps you understand how do teams need to interact? What do you need to do to make them successful? Experimentation, we're really trying to encourage that. It's much easier to spin something up, try it out, and learn that it doesn't work. And then simply focus. Going to that central web portal so you do not need to remember, where do I need to go to do this thing? It saves a lot of time. Some other benefits: centralization, experiment fast. You can fix the platform via inner sourcing. You can think of inner sourcing like open source with GitHub, but in your business, in the enterprise. I can't say that this has been the most successful so far. I'm really hopeful that in the future it will be incredibly successful. The challenge so far is, we all have our different priorities. The people that are really passionate about a new feature, some teams are really opinionated about blue-green deployments, that it needs to happen. They need to have blue-green. And it's a wonderful feature. It's really good to deploy, to have two environments and that you do the swap over for your code and no one's impacted. For Kubernetes, it gives us most of those things via the rolling rollout that it does. So it hasn't been a huge demand for everybody to use, but what I offer is, hey, send us a pull request. If you want to come join the team temporarily and work on that, like, come on, more the merrier. They haven't taken me up on that so far, so I'm not sure why. I asked some teams at Netflix and Apple. I don't know if you've heard of this company. They're probably just a mom and pop shop somewhere. But anyways, I've asked them, like, what does it look like in the future when you have more engineers and a bigger platform? And what does the self-service portal look like? What are you doing? What are the problems? What can I avoid? What are the problems I can avoid? And it's really simple stuff. It's discovery of your internal resources. What are the packages I can trust? What are the documentation that's up to date and trustworthy and valid? Where's the stuff? Who can I talk to? What is the state of this API? Is it still good? Is it out of date? Can I depend on it? And then just who owns these things? Who do I go to? So some lessons that they learned, they solved day one development very nice. They got it so fast to make new apps. They created 2 new problems, sprawl of these lightly used apps all over the place, and then just no ability to upgrade those apps in place. They didn't have any controls or governance over those apps that they've created. So then they put all that effort on the teams to, okay, how are we going to upgrade this from one major language for another? And then they've also built tools like Yelp-like marketplaces to illustrate to their internal users, like, this is a resource you can trust because people have voted on it or they visit it via analytics and whatnot. There's a lot of work that can go into making an internal business more productive that is difficult because of the sprawl and creation of information. 12-factor, if you go to 12factor.net, this has been a really great way to communicate to our internal engineers the difference between the Windows virtual machine environment and deploying code to that and why it's different in the Kubernetes land, in the cloud native landscape. And the reason that's important is because what we did is I had a trainer that he built this curriculum to kind of explain, why did we build this system? Why is it important? And then he would ask them to do a workshop kind of presentation, walk us through one of your older apps and why it applies to 12-factor or not. Now, not all the elements of 12-factor are going to fit for every single thing. There's 1 or 2 that are kind of like sketchy. But for the most part, this is a really great tool to communicate and train your internal developers what's different about cloud native. And what you can kind of think of it in summary is making your software more repeatable so that it's not so easy to get it into a state you need to manually touch and configure. So I really recommend check out 12factor.net. If you haven't, it's a really great resource if you ever have to build your own curriculum to explain, why is, like a silly question I get is in Kubernetes land, it's constantly restarting pods. Like that's just what it does. Like it doesn't let it sit. And what we're used to in the older environment is that we need to do these like, oh, make sure that we reboot the server essentially. Oh, did you reboot the server or did you reboot the web server? And we don't need to do that anymore. The Kubernetes does that for us. And so that's been a bit of a change because these developers are asking like, well, how do I do these old things I used to do? And the valid questions, but they don't apply to this new environment. And so there's quite a bit of education that's going to go into cloud native and Kubernetes for anyone that onboards. There's a lot of mistakes you can make with Kubernetes. And one of those with building platforms is try not to support too many use cases. I've seen this where people just get overburdened by the operational workload. It's a big part of the SRE book that Google put out, but just want to reiterate, try to really narrowly scope and maybe accept that you can't solve everyone's problems. And I've just seen a lot of challenges with explaining to senior leaders why cloud native is important. And I think where I'm landing with it so far is explaining the pain that they are not aware that they're feeling. So the pain is inconsistent project delivery. The pain is you're not able to move a developer from one team to another because that knowledge isn't there, and so on and so forth. Some other lessons learned, obviously vision alignment's hard. What I really recommend is that you build a very big vision. If you create a platform or you do anything big, just make a big vision so it's very inclusive and people want to help you. Otherwise, you can kind of get into this give and take of, I'll do this for you and then I'll do that for them. And it's not really good. I'd like to see the 4 C's of cloud native security. Peter, that's new on me. I'm really curious. If you have a link, I'd love to see it. The developers, as I hinted at earlier in the presentation, there was some level of control that they didn't feel very comfortable giving up. A lot of them have spent a lot of time building this very intricate CI/CD systems. that fire off things and do their blue-green, and we've taken that away from them a little bit, and it was a little hard, but you'll just have to overcome that. The Vault sidecar that runs with our container, with our pods and the containers, it's a little greedy, and I think if I were to do this over again, I would not use the sidecar as a way to inject our secrets. Instead, I would probably use the container storage interface that they offer. But for now, we had one near miss early at the beginning of the platform. We didn't set the right amount of Vault injectors, so that if you can imagine, like, the pods are constantly restarting, and as they come up, the sidecars have to come up with them. And if you don't have the right amount of injectors, it could come out in the wrong order, where the sidecar is booting a little bit later than the container. So the secrets are not mounted. And one of our first production apps, Teams, was a little blindsided by that. We jumped on it quickly, we fixed it, but it was a bit of a near miss for us. And they didn't notice and realize that they had lacking logging. The people are looking for a very stable platform, and the challenge is that anything that disrupts their feeling of safety, could really put your platform in risk. Another issue recently was that our Linkerd certificates expired after 1 year of running this platform on Rancher. And that was in the middle of the day while the business was running. And it was a bit of a challenge. It was a bit of a fright because we had a meeting with them later that afternoon. And all of a sudden, things were just like, they're going down and we're not sure why. And did someone change something? No one's changed anything. So we're like scrambling. And then all of a sudden we're like, oh, we should do our failover plan, which we hadn't really tried or tested it out yet because it wasn't really necessary. So we fail it over to another data center. And then all the apps are also freaking out now because now the latency is so big because the geographic distance of our data centers is so much. So everyone's like, oh, what do we do? Do we need okay, we're going to keep it running. Everything's side by side deployed in both data center. So it's totally fine. Everything's good. It's just now we're seeing huge latencies because file uploads are really slow. And that's causing chain reactions because there's a little bit too much coupling in some places. We figured out, we fumble a little bit. We update our Linkerd certificate authority, which expires after a year. We told them maybe 10 years would be better. And so we recovered, and what we learned were all these valuable lessons very quickly that we probably wouldn't have done on our own because we didn't have time to do it. That's a good question, Peter. I'll have to follow up with you on that one. So it was a really awesome lesson learned. We had teams that really learned about the platform and we recovered very quickly. And so while it was really annoying, it's just one of many production mishaps and outages that happen over the year that we recovered from. And then in particular, I love to use the metrics and signals from Git Lab. Their webhooks functionality has really given me a really in-depth lens of how the product is performing, how many apps are getting into production, how long it's taking from creation to production. We have about 17 days. So in 17 business days, we have an app that goes from ideation to into production. There's probably still some edits that happen after that, but that's pretty good. We don't have that much granular data with our older systems. Some other things that we're doing, we have declarative manifests that enable the standards enforcement, making sure no one's using root in the containers, that the resource quotas are correct. And in the future, there's just going to be lots of functionality in Kubernetes around the software bill of materials, making sure that you're running signed images, just anomaly monitoring, a lot of things that you probably have to pay a lot of vendors for, where this is in open source. So I'm very excited for the future. As we're aware of the SolarWinds hack, software bill of materials is just a huge topic that's really popular right now. I don't believe we're using quality of service yet for container deployments, but that might be an action item for me to look into. But so far, to your Vault question, we're not managing certificates with Vault at the moment. The main management certificates right now is with Linkerd for the mutual TLS. So some mindful technical coupling we're being careful of with all these different systems is we don't want to really invest in one particular tool or platform because we know that these things change and it's going to be a lot of change. And prices for paying for support contracts could be different. So what we're trying to do as much as possible is we're not going to white label things and really hide it from people. We'll let them navigate, via links to go to those external systems, but they're able to communicate. And we've built some APIs that really coordinate all the state that we need to do to go through the process of creating your app, getting access to it, doing your API design, which we're really trying to encourage better API design. So training, I really recommend if you ever go on a platform journey and ask for training or advocate for training. My one caution though is any training that's focused on Kubernetes might be focused on the platform engineering side of Kubernetes and not you as a developer using Kubernetes as a place to run your code. So just be cautious of that. 12-factor, I think it's a really great place to do that. And then just communication. Building a platform is a lot of work. I say that half the work is building the platform and half the work is communicating what's being built and getting the usage, the growth, making sure people are going to be on board with your platform, trying it out. I send out weekly emails. I send out video updates via Loom. I have a dedicated Slack channel, which I, looking back, realized that I wasn't clear enough that this is a hospitality-based it's self-service, but we provide you support. And a lot of our developers were so autonomous that they didn't really like being helped for a little bit. They didn't know that they were supposed to be helped. And so that was interesting. Then we also move a lot of questions into our private Stack Overflow. We have our own subscription, and that's been really beneficial to build up this knowledge base so that we're not getting the same questions over and over again in Slack, because that river of text just keeps going up and up and up. So people never really scroll up or they don't search for their question that often. We built a dedicated documentation portal that's really helped with tutorials and supplemental training, but it's not a really a central training resource. The training team, they built a custom curriculum, and that was much better to explain the whys than the tutorials that we built. And I simply ask, make sure you're getting testimonials for the thing that you built. It really goes a long way to encourage others to try and use your platform. Like I said, growth is the hard thing. Building it, you can build something that just works, and the more that you can get people encouraged and sending you feature requests and using it and giving you ideas, I think that's really valuable. So we're 46 applications, 14 teams. Yeah, it's been a really great journey. It's about 1.5 years so far. I'm really excited about where we have to go. We have big things planned in the future. But are there any other questions? Peter, you've had a lot of really great questions. Thank you so much throughout the presentation. But yeah, let me know. I'd love to help anyone if you have any questions about platforms, if you ever end up building one.
Okay, this is Pete. Are you using any identity management inside of your Kubernetes system, or, tokenizing security?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think a big goal for us coming up is going to be service-to-service authentication that we'll probably do via Ambassador, and we use.
I would suggest you to go to OpenID and OAuth, even if you just want to be your own provider. There's an open source tool out there called Keycloak. It's from Red Hat. I would cluster it as well if you want at least a clustered identity manager if you're going to be self-hosting it. Otherwise, go outside of yourself and go to someone like Okta or Ping.
Yeah, we're using Okta, so we'll probably use their JOTS and Ambassador. I think that's the plan, but it's still early. But that's great feedback, Peter. Thank you.
Because you need it inside of your containers. Your containers have to be aware who's using it. And that's part of the 12-factor, is what I'm noting to you. Because security is very much should be the first thing when a developer is writing their own container. That should be their first thought. Even when friends don't let friends run as root is the motto. And therefore, this is the way you start with them. But then if they don't know who's using it, that's another issue.
Yeah, that's really well said, Peter. I think a big challenge we have is we hire a lot of green developers right out of university, and it's a really hard challenge training them on all these important things like security and better API design. So that's wonderful feedback. Thank you.
Do you have visibility into your Linkerd sidecars, do you have visibility to know which container has security applied to it and which is not? Are you using something like Kali?
So we have very tight control over the pipeline. We use one pipeline in Git Lab, and we don't give any access to developers to change it.
About observability inside of the containerization and the traffic. Like you use Grafana right now, but what other visibilities do you allow to see is security set?
Well, the way that we do that is we have StackRox that does a lot of security monitoring for us, and then we also have via Linkerd a lot of like Grafana dashboards that it provides, and then we also have our logging system that provides a lot of resources. So that's where we start right now.
Okay.
Yeah, it's been really great. Like the security side, like we have a real tight lens on it. We do a lot of work. I can't really mention what we use, but we do a lot of stuff to make sure that we're monitoring and making sure people can't access or do certain things. Like our audience, they don't really know how to use Kubernetes. We don't give them any access to use what's built under the hood. They really only have access to their code repository, and that's about it.
Can you tell me how many clusters you're currently running?
I don't have the number off the top of my head, but it's probably less than 10. Just the different data centers, and we don't have a massive footprint.
Gives me an idea of what you're dealing with.
Yeah, we're pretty lightweight. Like most of the apps that we build and provide are very commodity APIs. We work in mortgages, so it's really just a big loan application document that we're sending across different services. It's nothing like high performance or anything too wild.
At some point you'll get, I'm sorry, the more you deploy, the higher number of pods and containers that are inside of it will ultimately, I hate to tell you this, you'll be crippled at some point because you'll outgrow it.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a risk for any of the things that we build. There just may not be a fit, or we need to really invest more. So yeah.
If we don't have observability inside of your containers, like how much memory, how much throughput are you seeing? How are you then able to know what is irregular usage on a lane within your linkered environment? These are the things that if you're not manage it through QoS, and then saying that, no, I will not let you go past 80% of your CPU. Therefore, no, you're going to have to gracefully shut down, or you're not taking requests. And these are the things that as you grow, as you pack more and more into it, like I'm assuming you're using things like Spring Boot.
Well, we're something similar. We're .NET shop. So what we do have is we do auto instrument these applications with our baseline observability, like you're saying. So we have like Prometheus extra metrics endpoints, and via the logging and Prometheus like exporters to our Grafana system, Loki, whatnot. We are able to have a really tight lens about what is the usage. Like .NET's a little fat, but so far it has like the kinds of apps that they're running. They haven't like exceeded any bounds. But I think it's really important to be aware and set those limits, like you're saying.
Yeah, thank you.
Great questions, Peter. You really know your stuff.
Well, I work on AWS systems right now, and I understand it because I create all this stuff very fast, and I like Terraform. Terraform, you could use it on Kubernetes systems also. It's easy to understand how you could do it. What version of Kubernetes are you using right now?
Right now we're on 1.19, and we're probably going to be upgrading pretty soon to 1.21.
Be concerned about the YAML files. The YAML files are going to start changing on you. Be aware that they will not be compatible with your other versions, especially for ingress. For those things that you used to see that were experimental, or beta, I should say, the beta is going away.
Yeah, we've definitely had to upgrade our ingresses because of that. So yeah, that's definitely something to be mindful of as you're upgrading your platform. They are not only deprecating, but they are removing APIs.
Do you have anything that controls or like gives you visibility into the quality of the YAMLs that you're using right now that you deploy to Kubernetes?
We have some tools that give you some tips and warnings, but we centrally manage those YAMLs. We have one Helm chart that is a mix of different like sidecar manifests that we provide. So the cognitive load that we have to focus on is pretty small. So it's really easy for us to keep an eye on, what's coming up that we need to change.
Have you looked at data tree?
I have not. What is data tree?
Data tree actually scans your YAML files for deficiencies. Things like I'm telling you about QoS. It would flag that you are missing these things. There's like 30 rules, and you can add more rules to it as you see fit. The person who would be most appreciative would be the person who is really, really hot-bedded on like managing the Kubernetes environment, let's say namespaces and other areas, and like determining storage and quotas of storage and things like this. Because when certain things are missing, you'll have less visibility inside of your Kubernetes system, and therefore it helps you to then ensure better quality what you're delivering inside of the systems. Because
Nice.
Kubernetes will not warn you. They'll just say, no, I wasn't able to complete it. You have an error. That's all it gives.
Yeah, that's a really great point. We've one of the big struggles we've had is explaining to the developers the readiness and liveness probes, and being aware that that's something to be careful of. And there's a lot to learn with this system for sure. So I'll definitely check out data tree. That's great.
It's a small tool. It's not that difficult,
Right.
but it's a little harder to get everybody to adopt it. If you put it inside of your build path, it helps you to have a check for what are you doing with your YAML files.
Yes. Yeah, that's great. We were adding a lot of stuff to the pipeline, and I think that's where the rapid inner loop tool can really help. Is I imagine right now it's 10 minutes to send your manifest to Kubernetes and get it all deployed and everything through our pipeline. But over time, we're going to add stuff like data tree, and it's just going to get a little slower and slower. So that's where the rapid inner loop comes in. Well, thank you for listening, everybody. I hope that was informative and you learned something new. If you ever plan on using Kubernetes or building a platform, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'd love to talk with others that are building platforms. It's really popular now, and it'll probably continue to be a big thing in the future. But I imagine, like Peter says, like there's a lot of things you can mess up, and you got to be aware that there's all these great tools that you need to use and leverage to make people successful.
Please look at the humor that I sent for the little image that I shared, because it's really a tale of adopting Kubernetes, because it looks all so easy at the start, but then you stick your big toe in it and you fall to the bottom.
Yeah, it's definitely not going to be as easy as any of those presentations online or fun demos are. It's a lot of work. It's really a big job of you need a dedicated team of people. And so the whole point of the presentation is really like build a platform, and that might be a very minimal, tiny platform just using VMs and some configuration management, because Kubernetes is a lot, like you're saying, Peter.
I just like to say, I'd like to jump in here a little bit, because I didn't understand Kubernetes until I got handed some source code from another developer. I tried to deploy it on my local machine, and I'm like, okay, I need to set up a MySQL database. Okay, I need to set up the password. I need to know, right, this needs to be in that directory. This needs to be over here. These, all sorts of this stuff. And I ultimately failed because it's too difficult for me to get set up. And I'm like, with Kubernetes, you set up this image and everything, the whole system is set up so that all the different components know where each other is and how to talk to each other. And you just move it around, put it anywhere you want to. You don't have to worry about all the secrets and all the stuff. You don't have to worry about all these weird configurations because I was Googling on the net how to set up a OAuth configuration table, and I had to input certain tables into the MySQL database to try to get it to run. And it just was, yeah.
Yeah, the declarative model is really a game changer. And there's some nuances that make it hard for our developers. So what they kind of expect sometimes is, okay, I'm going to redeploy the code. Like maybe you can imagine Jenkins, copying files to someplace. And then it doesn't work that way because it's declarative. It says, please install version 1.6. And then if Kubernetes says, but I have 1.6, that fails, and then they're confused. So it's very easy. It's very simple, but like Peter said, there's a lot to learn there.
Read the logs, please, first.
Read the
before
logs.
Redeploying.
Yeah, please read the logs.
Okay, well, thank you for your great presentation there. And I guess we're ready to proceed to the raffle. I just give everybody a round of applause. I'm not sure exactly how to do that virtually, but thank you for the presentation.
Yeah, I hope it's helpful. I know not all of us are building platforms, but it's good to know what kind of resources are out there.
All right.
Oh, gosh.